Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today, we're diving into the world of high-level political corruption. We're talking about leaders who treat their national treasuries like personal piggy banks and whose legacies are more about how much they could get away with. Compiling a top 10 of corruption is like picking the most problematic episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's all a bit much, isn't it? A veritable buffet of bad choices, but someone's got to do it, and thankfully for you, that someone is me. So buckle up as we shine a light on 10 figures who've turned governing into a criminal enterprise. We're not just talking about a few misplaced funds here. We're talking about sums of money so vast they could make even Jeff Bezos think, well, that's a bit excessive, isn't it? First up, we're heading to southern Africa to meet a man who clung to power like a barnacle on a cruise ship, Robert Mugabe. For nearly 4 decades, Mugabe ruled Zimbabwe, starting with the hopes of a nation behind him, but forgetting a key part of the job description for the people. Mugabe's reign was marked by hyperinflation, so extreme they were printing trillion-dollar bills at one point. But it wasn't just economic mismanagement. Mugabe had a real knack for human rights abuses, allegedly orchestrating violence and intimidation to silence dissent. Imagine if instead of resigning, Richard Nixon had just kept quadrupling down for another 30 years. That's essentially what happened in Zimbabwe. Land seizures, election rigging, you name it, Mugabe's regime was a masterclass in turning a promising nation into a cautionary tale. And what did Mugabe himself have to show for all of this? A life of luxury. While his people struggled to afford basic necessities, he was living it up like a Bond villain. So there you have it, Robert Mugabe, a man who went from liberation hero to a complicated legacy. Next, we're jetting over to the Philippines, a nation known for its beautiful beaches and a history of political dynasties. Enter Ferdinand Marcos, a man who, along with his wife Imelda and her infamous shoe collection, treated the Philippines like their own personal shopping mall. Marcos ruled the Philippines for over 2 decades, first as a democratically elected president, and later, well, not so much. He declared martial law in 1972, essentially saying, look, I like democracy and all, but I like being in charge even more. This ushered in an era of authoritarian rule, censorship and rampant corruption. We're talking billions of dollars siphoned out of the country, stashed away in Swiss bank accounts, used to fund a lifestyle so opulent it would make a Saudi prince say, okay, now you're just showing off. Imelda's shoe collection alone became legendary, a symbol of the Marcos regime's excess and indifference to the plight of ordinary Filipinos. And you know what the worst part is? The Marcos family never really went away. After being ousted in a popular uprising, they eventually slithered back into the Philippines, their name still carrying enough weight to regain political influence. It's enough to make you believe in reincarnation just so they could be held accountable in a karmic court of law. But hey, at least we got a good documentary out of it, right? So there you have it, Ferdinand Marcos, a man whose legacy is as controversial as it is enduring. Now, let's journey to the heart of Africa, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, where we meet Mobutu Sese Seko. This guy, oh boy, he was in a league of his own. Imagine a dictator with the fashion sense of Liberace and the economic acumen of, well, a dictator who renames his country after himself. Mobutu ruled Zaire for over 3 decades, presiding over a period so rife with corruption and human rights abuses that it makes your average banana republic look like a model of governance. He amassed a personal fortune estimated in the billions, most of it stolen directly from the Zairean treasury, while his people suffered through poverty, disease and violence. Mobutu was practically a caricature of a dictator, building himself palaces, flying in chefs from Paris to bake him croissants, and generally treating Zaire like his own personal playground. He even once airlifted in a group of cheerleaders from Brazil for his birthday. But it wasn't all fun and games. Mobutu's regime was brutal, suppressing dissent with the enthusiasm of a toddler who doesn't want to share their toys. He rigged elections, silenced critics, and made life for anyone who dared question his rule a living hell. So there you have it, Mobutu Sese Seko, a man who proved that absolute power doesn't just corrupt absolutely. It also makes you really bad at managing a country's finances. Now, let's journey to the heart of Africa, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, where we meet Mobutu Sese Seko. This guy, oh boy, he was in a league of his own. Imagine a dictator with the fashion sense of Liberace and the economic acumen of, well, a dictator who renames his country after himself. Mobutu ruled Zaire for over 3 decades, presiding over a period so rife with corruption and human rights abuses that it makes your average banana republic look like a model of governance. He amassed a personal fortune estimated in the billions, most of it stolen directly from the Zairean treasury, while his people suffered through poverty, disease and violence. Mobutu was practically a caricature of a dictator, building himself palaces, flying in chefs from Paris to bake him croissants, and generally treating Zaire like his own personal playground. He even once airlifted in a group of cheerleaders from Brazil for his birthday. But it wasn't all fun and games. Mobutu's regime was brutal, suppressing dissent with the enthusiasm of a toddler who doesn't want to share their toys. He rigged elections, silenced critics, and made life for anyone who dared question his rule a living hell. So there you have it, Mobutu Sese Seko, a man who proved that absolute power doesn't just corrupt absolutely. It also makes you really bad at managing a country's finances. Chapter 4, Suharto, Indonesia's family business of corruption. Hold on, folks, because we're heading to Indonesia, a sprawling archipelago nation where we meet Suharto. Suharto ruled Indonesia for over 30 years, turning the country into his personal ATM. He came to power after a bloody coup, promising stability and prosperity. Stability meant crushing dissent, and prosperity was for his inner circle. The people of Indonesia, they dealt with poverty and hardship. Suharto's reign is a stark reminder of corruption's impact on the many for the benefit of the few. Chapter 5, Vladimir Putin, the Tsar of Shady Oligarchs. Now let's hop over to Russia, a land of borscht, ballet and political intrigue. At the center of it all, Vladimir Putin, from KGB agent to political strongman. Putin's rise coincided with the Soviet Union's collapse. He promised stability but delivered a system rewarding loyalty and crushing dissent. Putin claims to be a humble servant of the state, but there's humble, and then there's allegedly having $1 billion palace. Russia's resources enriched a select few, not the average Russian. Critics accuse Putin of overseeing a deeply corrupt system. They point to the suspicious deaths of journalists and political opponents. Chapter 6. Nawaz Sharif, Pakistan's 3-time Prime Minister, 3-time corruption accused. Next, we're off to Pakistan, a nation with a rich history and vibrant culture. Few figures embody its political turmoil like Nawaz Sharif, 3-time Prime Minister. His tenure is marked by economic policies and corruption scandals. Accusations include money laundering and tax evasion. Sharif denies these claims, calling them politically motivated, but the volume of accusations paints a different picture. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're heading to South Africa, a nation known for its stunning landscapes and a recent history of political scandals. And at the center of many of these scandals, Jacob Zuma, a man whose presidency seemed to be one long, drawn-out exercise in testing the limits of public trust. Zuma, a former anti-apartheid activist who spent years imprisoned on Robben Island alongside Nelson Mandela, came to power promising hope and change. But his presidency quickly became bogged down in allegations of corruption, cronyism, and a truly staggering lack of judgment. We're talking about accusations of using taxpayer money to upgrade his private residence, of allowing a wealthy business family with close ties to him to influence government appointments, of just generally treating the state coffers like his own personal slush fund. It got to the point where South Africa's top court ruled that he had violated the constitution, and he faced calls to resign from within his own party. Zuma's supporters, however, remained loyal, praising his populist policies and his commitment to the poor. But his critics argued that his actions undermined the very foundations of South Africa's democracy, eroding trust in institutions and setting a dangerous precedent for future leaders. Next stop, Venezuela, a nation blessed with incredible natural beauty and cursed with some of the most dysfunctional governance this side of a dystopian novel. And leading the charge into this abyss, Nicolas Maduro, a man who inherited a country teetering on the brink and somehow managed to steer it straight off the cliff. Maduro, handpicked by Hugo Chavez to succeed him as president, took over a country already struggling with economic mismanagement and political polarization. But instead of righting the ship, Maduro seemed to double down on all the policies that had gotten Venezuela into trouble in the first place, with predictable results. Under Maduro's rule, Venezuela experienced one of the worst economic collapses in modern history. Hyperinflation spiraled out of control, basic goods became scarce, and millions of Venezuelans were forced to flee their homes in search of food and medicine. But amidst this humanitarian crisis, amidst the suffering and the shortages, there was a select group of people who seemed to be doing just fine. Maduro and his cronies. Accusations of corruption, embezzlement, and outright theft ran rampant, with billions of dollars allegedly siphoned out of the Venezuelan economy and into the pockets of those in power. Let's travel to Egypt, the land of pharaohs, pyramids, and a modern history of political repression. For nearly 3 decades, Hosni Mubarak ruled Egypt with an iron fist, confusing stability with stagnation. He came to power in 1981 after Anwar Sadat's assassination, promising peace and prosperity. Mubarak kept Egypt stable, but his regime was riddled with corruption. Public funds turned into private fortunes, with billions siphoned out, lavish lifestyles for the elite, while millions struggled. The Arab Spring changed everything, as Egyptians demanded change. Let's jet over to Italy, a land of pasta, vespers, and political scandal. Few embody that like Silvio Berlusconi, a media mogul turned politician. Charming and charismatic, he faced accusations of bribery, tax fraud, and more. His time in office was a whirlwind of scandals and trials, but accusations rolled off him like water off a duck's back. Berlusconi's reign showed the power of charisma and the Italian public's capacity to forgive. So there you have it, folks, a whirlwind tour of some of the most jaw-droppingly corrupt leaders in recent history. From Zimbabwe to Italy, from the Philippines to Venezuela, these individuals have shown us that power, when left unchecked, can be a hell of a drug, leading to a level of greed and self-dealing that's truly staggering. But here's the thing, corruption doesn't exist in a vacuum. It thrives in environments where institutions are weak, where accountability is lacking, and where the rule of law is, shall we say, flexible. So the next time you hear about a corrupt politician, don't just shake your head and sigh. Don't just accept it as the way things are, because it's not inevitable. It's a choice. And it's up to all of us to demand better, to hold our leaders accountable, and to create a world where the pursuit of power doesn't automatically come at the expense of the people. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Let us know in the comments who you think should have made the list.